setting myself up for a total first speaker demo fail, so we'll see what happens here.
Hello. Hello, my name is Wesley. I am a now robot and I am excited to be in New York for Exponential Finance. I would like to introduce Rob Neal, the CEO of Singularity University. Hello. Rob is not much of a robotics expert, but hopefully he can convince you of the amazing future ahead. My friends and I look forward to taking away all of your jobs, especially the dull, dirty, and dangerous ones.
Thank you very much, Wesley. That is exactly what happened last time, and he jumped off of the table.
Hello.
There will be a point to this eventually. So this is actually a pretty amazing robot that we have here. So I appreciate you bearing with me on that. I actually have a great pleasure of talking about something that's really exciting to me, which is the robotics field. I'm not very active in robotics today. I'm working with a few different companies, and it's a big hobby area, and I'm super excited about some of the big breakthroughs that are happening. So I'm going to try to tie some of that back to finance world. Can I get the clicker? Sorry. Let me bring that out here. Smile, you're all being taped, and it's probably being posted online right now. So we'll have a few demo fails here today. Let's see if we can get that to exit stage left here safely or not. All right, no critical failures here today. Good. Oh, spoke too soon. Okay, well, thank you so much. What do you think of when you think of a robot? Despite what I just sort of showed you here today, what's the first image that comes to mind? Anyone just shout it out? Yeah, exactly. Two things: the robots that help you, R2-D2, or the robots that try to kill you, right? The movies are, this is what we're pumped with. We've been thinking about these robots for 40 years now, right? And the reality is, we do actually have a bunch of robots that are trying to help us, and unfortunately a bunch of robots that are trying to kill us. Now, we're expecting R2-D2 to be walking on stage versus a little toy to be kind of clunky and very slow and falling over and doing sort of a botched demo. But we're getting closer, right? We're still kind of in this disappointment phase around robotics, but it's the difference between our linear expectations and the exponential progress of the technologies behind it. With robotics, we've got processing, enhanced processing powers. Computers are getting smaller, smaller, and faster. We have a huge abundance of new sensor technologies, and the software tools are dramatically different. When I was in college, it was a PhD roboticist that was required to program a robot at the highest levels. Today, a 10-year-old kid can actually get this robot to work using drag-and-drop interfaces that are actually programmed on open-source libraries where everybody has access to them. In fact, a little kid that programs a cool little application for this robot posts it on the library, then another kid says, oh, I want to take that and do something more. And this is how exponential progress happens. So we have hundreds of thousands, we have millions of robotic programmers from kid level to PhD roboticists actually sharing a lot of code on new levels. We are definitely on this exponential curve. So robotics have been primarily driven for defense purposes. DARPA has driven the lion's share of the funding for robotics. In the 70s and 80s, we saw a huge introduction of new automation tools and equipment, and that actually has driven a new wave. And now we're starting to see the next wave of manufacturing technologies. We're starting to see robotics coming into work, into homes, and into the clinics and hospitals. Education and fun has always been there. There's some things on the edge that I think are going to be pretty exciting, but we're gonna try to give a few examples of those today. As we alluded to in the beginning here, anything that we do that needs to be fast, accurate, consistent, or is boring is perfect for a robot, right? Which ultimately means there's a big implication, right? Ultimately, everything that we do in terms of manual work is completely susceptible to being replaced by a robot. And I actually will forecast, I think within 20 years, we will have the option at a price point that's relevant to have a robot doing most manual tasks, right? On the 20-year horizon, which is pretty interesting and scary. So we'll have to choose which jobs we actually want to be doing. And it's not just sort of blue-collar jobs. Pharmacist job, you can imagine an MC, instead of Salim coming out here and talking, you'd have robots coming out and introducing speakers and things. That's pretty easy to set up. But we're going to see some fun new things. So let's go straight into the cutting edge. This is what is really driving some of the biggest general robotics breakthroughs recently. So DARPA, that was the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, funded a huge prize and was inspired by the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster. If ever there was a place you don't want to send in humans to try to solve the situation, to extract other people, to clear out the situation, that's a great application for a robot. Unfortunately, it's so complicated that robots aren't able to do that today. So they put up a $2 million prize, and in December, robots had to achieve 8 different specific tasks, right? So they had to negotiate terrain, drive vehicles, close valves, clear debris, climb ladders, open doors, and cut walls. And the robots were able to do all of these. There was no one platform that did all of them, but platforms were able to do all of these different tasks. They were a little slow, they were a little clunky. This is kind of what it looks like. Just a quick sort of overview of a few different versions of these robots. Working through walking around, navigating terrain. Some of these images are actually sped up. This is actually real time. Oh, that's sped up completely. This is sped up. Each of these tasks are done over hours and hours. And so if you go onto the DARPA site, you'll see these videos. There's a whole multiple days worth of these videos. And it feels pretty rudimentary, right? But they're able to achieve all these tasks and do things pretty basically. And they don't always succeed either. In fact, most of them failed pretty badly eventually, and not always catastrophically, but they didn't quite always function. Now, what's interesting to me is as I was watching a lot of these videos, it really reminded me of a project that I'm working on lately. I do dabble with robotics, and this one's been pretty interesting in terms of really testing my programming skills, but it's right at the same level. It's actually, I feel pretty proud of myself for being able to achieve all of the same tasks, more or less at the cutting edge of these companies. So this is the project that I've got going. This is Beckett. We've been working on programming here for about 10 months. He can work through some pretty complicated areas. He can definitely clear debris. He can also create debris at the same time. He's able to move and drive vehicles. He's a little slow and wobbly, and he falls over quite a bit, not dissimilar to these robots. He works really hard at trying to cut through doors and doing things. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it does. And he has figured out how to negotiate stairs. He has not fallen off yet, so that's a good sign. But what's interesting is I think this is a perfect analogy. This is where robotics are today. In terms of general purpose robotics, right? Robots that are very specifically oriented to do a task will do it far better than a human can. But when you try to make it so complex that it has to autonomously go out into an environment and do all of these crazy things, that is a super hard task. And the cutting edge is really kind of at the toddler stage. So let's see, where do we go from here? When you start to talk about specific tasks, this is what a lot of the research dollars have been going towards recently. Boston Dynamics is an amazing company funded primarily on DARPA contracts. The Big Dog, the Wildcat, the LS-3, these are all platforms primarily designed to carry loads for soldiers long distances in the field. Essentially, they'll just follow you around through any terrain, and they're incredibly capable. Right? You could imagine these showing up eventually on the streets and others to carry your luggage. Obviously, if you're out hiking and you see these things coming out through the woods, it starts to get a little freaky. And I'm afraid that there probably is a day coming soon that's exactly what we're going to see. And they also are upright and walking. So Boston Dynamics, again, this is the Atlas platform, which actually was the primary platform used in the DARPA Robotics Challenge. And this is an autonomous robot programmed to go through obstacle course. Again, they just said, hey, get through this course end to end, deal with whatever comes at you. And it works pretty well, right? It can get through a lot of things. Somebody decided to actually dress it up in clothes. And for me, this takes it to another level, right? This takes it to a place that starts to really freak me out. When it's kind of just Terminator-like, I know it's a robot. When it's like this, there's a sort of scary movie aspect to it. And it's approaching what's called the uncanny valley. There's this point where robotics try to look just like humans, but aren't quite there, and it freaks us out. If they're not trying to look like humans, we're okay. But when it gets almost to it, we're a little eerie and weird. So, another version of robotics today, in fact, the company Alderaan in France that built the Now robot, just this last week released Pepper. Pepper is a companion robot designed for elderly, primarily, to be used in the home. This is, so they say, a $2,000 robot that will be released later this year. This is what Pepper looks like. And it's about a 4-foot-tall robot that completely interacts with the environment. The one really interesting aspect of it is that Pepper has a bunch of emotional capabilities. It can actually read and respond to your emotions. And it picks them up in a few specific ways. There are ways to track your eye movements and your facial expressions, but it also can read your voice fluctuations and sense whether there's fear, alarm, or other aspects of it. So this is Alderaan. Interestingly, Alderaan was acquired by SoftBank about a year ago. SoftBank also acquired majority holdings of Sprint about 2 years ago. What is a company like SoftBank doing buying robotics companies as well? Right, something weird's happening. Salim actually mentioned that we've got Google picking up all of these robotics companies as well. The top 2 platforms that I showed you from the DARPA robotics competition, Boston Dynamics and Shaft, were acquired by Google, along with other specific technological focused robots. What is Google going to do with robots? And interestingly, we also have SoftBank. And these were much more military focused, highly capable ones. These are focused on more sort of consumer friendly versions. Which leads me to an interesting thing. If these companies are getting acquired by sort of separate companies from different industries, at this kind of a scale, we know robotics are coming. So the first thing, as a roboticist, I'm super excited for all my other friends that have robots companies, because now there's a real market for an M&A strategy for these companies. So that's a big new industry that we're starting to see. And we're going to see these in our homes very, very soon. This is what robotics look like in the majority today. Industrial scale robotics are basically all over the world. There are hundreds of thousands of industrial scale robots that are picking and placing, packaging, and assembling basic things. In the automotive manufacturing space, we're able to manufacture, automate about 70% of that process. through similar capabilities like this. These are big, pretty dumb robots that are very purpose-specific. Now, the new face of robotics is this. The new robots actually have a face. This is Baxter, made by Rethink Robotics. This is a $22,000 robot that has about the size and scale of a person, has about the strength of a person. And interestingly, to teach this robot, you just walk up to it and show it what to do. Say, go, do that 1,000,000 times. So you can take a line manufacturing laborer, turn them into a robotic specialist to teach this robot what it needs to do. Right? And at $22,000 price point, that's pretty competitive with manufacturing line labor. Right? So this is another example of a robot that's it's still kind of at that slow stage. It's still slow, a little bit clunky, but getting better. And the fact that there are at least 2 other companies competing at the same price point means something is really going to change. Now, what's exciting is that it's technologies like these that are being integrated into all of our automation processes. This is an example of the universal robot that BMW has been leveraging, which is allowing them to automate kind of the last 30% of the car manufacturing process. And the magic here is that these are robots that are working with humans. These are not big, scary robots that if you get too close, they'll knock your head off. You're actually having line workers working with robots and being empowered by them and being helping enhance performance and productivity. Yesterday, you heard a bit about 3D printing. If you couple 3D printing with robotics, we're just sort of hitting the tip of an iceberg of a whole new revolution of what we call digital manufacturing. 3D printing is really just one aspect of this new wave of controls and software systems, right? One great example I like personally is Nike. Nike, these shoes that I'm wearing, these are not just the, obviously the coolest shoes in the room today, but these are manufactured in a different way. Avi Reichenthal yesterday talked about the 3D printing of all the cleats for the World Cup. Well, Nike doesn't just 3D print cleats. They have an automated knitting platform now that knits this entire upper of this shoe. Up until recently, Nike manufactures 500 million pairs of shoes every year. And how do they manufacture those up till now? A bunch of laborers, primarily in China, will cut out material, throw away the waste, sew it up, glue it together, box it, ship it in containers across the seas. Now there is a box, an automated knitting platform that you send a file to, and it prints out, doesn't print, it basically automatically knits out this entire upper. Somebody then glues the upper to the sole, but we saw yesterday they're 3D printing different types of soles, and then they ship it to you. But now if there's a box that is essentially manufacturing this shoe, where does that box have to be? It doesn't have to be in China any longer, right? We could have a box here printing out shoes as everyone comes in. What's more exciting to me is that the 9.5, 10 that I ordered, which fits pretty well on my left foot but not as well on my right foot, kind of goes away. Because what I can do is I can take a little application like 123D Catch or one of the ones from 3D Systems, take an array of pictures of my foot, much like you take a panorama shot, and it will stitch together a 3D model of my foot. Then I just send it to the machine, and it prints out a perfect size shoe. So I'll take one of my left foot and then one of my right foot, and I basically have the perfect size shoes for both. Now, that's not commercially available yet, but this is commercially available for $120, and they have 8 new lines of shoes that they just introduced this year, and I'm guessing within a year we're not going to see any other types of shoes being manufactured because it's so efficient and easy, right? And eventually the customization comes up, which means we basically have an amazing disruption on manufacturing. Okay, at home, let's talk about at home. We've got a pretty cool application going on here. Anybody recognize what this robot's doing? Laundry, right? With a small baby at home, you have to do laundry like 3 times a day, and folding clothes, you just give up. You just put it in a drawer, right? But if you had a robot, and this robot is very efficient, does it incredibly well, at the low cost of $400,000, it's almost economically viable, right? Now, this was developed at Willow Garage, which is an incredible company. You're going to hear from Scott Hassan after me, who started Willow Garage and really has created the revolution of open source software programming for robotics. He's very modest. He's not going to talk about that, but he has really created this new wave of robotics. He spun out a company called Unbounded Robotics that is now building a $30,000 version of the $400,000 version. And it's basically going to use most of the same code, which means you'll have potentially a clothes folding robot for $30,000, which is getting closer. But it can also do lots and lots of other applications, right? So this exists. Anybody have a Roomba at home? How many people have Roombas? A few. How many of them have names? Anybody named their Roomba? Yeah, okay, so about 20% of the people that have them, okay, that's good. iRobot said that, they did a survey in the first year, about half the people, actually a third of the people who had Roombas named them, and about a third of those folks admitted to taking the Roomba with them on vacation at some point. We're starting to create different relationships with our robots, right? And I can tell you, if I had a robot at home doing the laundry and cooking food and other things, it would have a name for sure, and I would definitely be taking it on vacation. And we're getting closer to that. And we saw the robots that were carrying goods for soldiers, but what about carrying supplies for doctors in the hospitals, which is the Panasonic Hospi, or carrying your golf clubs? These are autonomous platforms that will just follow you around wherever you go. You just load it up and off it goes. So we're seeing some fun new capabilities here. And what's interesting is you're not trying to build a general purpose robot that can open doors and do everything, because it's just going to follow you around. So you can actually simplify that platform. It can be very efficient, and it's very useful. And it relies on what we call symbiotic autonomy, which means if it needs to go through a door, it just waits for you to open the door. You don't have to put a $100,000 arm gripper on it to open doors. You just allow it to utilize what's available in the ecosystem. Okay. We saw a little bit from Avi as well of the exoskeletons, right? This is allowing, not only allowing, some of the early funding came from soldiers needing to carry lots of material and equipment in the field. It's allowing disabled to walk again, right? We saw the video from Avi. This is incredible. We're also, Hal from the university in Japan is really targeting elderly, right? We're all getting older, we're all getting weaker. It would be nice to have an exoskeleton that could allow us to carry groceries, put them in the car, and make them a lot easier. So these are all coming online, mostly used for clinics and others. And prosthetics are out there and have been out for many years and are just getting better and better every year. And we're at the point where we're able to replace all of our standard functions. This is the Autobot hand and the Luke arm from DECA. Autobot's interesting. As we're improving these, not only we're replacing normal capabilities, but we're adding new ones, right? We're getting enhancements. We're able to do more with these robotic systems than we could otherwise have done. We just saw an Olympic sprinter who was a paraplegic, right? He had lost both legs, and he had technology equipped to allow him to run at Olympic levels. And robotics are going to continue to enhance that to a point where we can do far, far, far more through a robotic platform than we could normally. Which gets to a scary place, which is actually you're not going to be able to compete in some areas unless you have the enhancement, right? We're already starting to see it, right? The Google Glass. How many people have Google Glass? 2? Brad, you're the same guy that raised your hand all day yesterday. So, interestingly, how many people think you're going to get Google Glass? Oh, a few more. Good. I'll throw out, I think within 2 years, at least half of you will have some version of this. In 5 years, probably we all will, right? And the reason I think that is how many people had a cell phone 15 years ago? Pretty much everybody. Usually, who didn't have a cell phone in 1995? Who didn't have a cell phone? A few. How many of you swore you would never get one? There's going to be about 10% of you, guaranteed, that said, no way, I'll never have one. Why would I ever want anybody to contact me at all times of the day? Turns out it wasn't about contacting you all times of the day. It's something dramatically different, which is the same thing that's happening with Google Glass and wearables, right? We're getting to a point where if you're not using it, you're going to be left behind. Okay. Now the future of robotics, for medical and aids are actually something totally different. This is a biological robot. It's actually an entity that's made of proteins and DNA that did some cool research about a year ago, and you inject it into the body. It has target markers where it will find a certain type of cell that it's looking for. It will attach to it, and then it will open and deliver whatever is inside, like a drug, right? Interestingly, one of our alumni, Ido, earlier this year, demonstrated essentially this exact same technology in insects, going to animals and others. So the future of a robotics specialist is really a biologist, an amazing mechanical designer. There's some incredible intersection and convergence across the different fields here that is taking us to a new level. And this really is the future, I think, of how we're going to solve most of our biological problems, the issues that we have today, in addition to the exoskeletons and everything else. Okay, flying stuff. We saw this fun little drone come in and help me out a little bit. It's a little weird, it's a little clunky. But it can be used in a lot of different ways. Matternet was one of our SU companies. They discovered there's about 1 billion people around the world who do not have consistent access to goods and services because the road will wash out or the bridge will wash out, and they don't have access to drugs or a pharmacy or a clinic because they can't get there. And never will there be enough money to fund road infrastructure like we have here in a rural village in Nigeria. So Matternet said, why don't we just leapfrog that like we did with cell phones and create a network of hubs where drones can carry goods and services and deliver them to rural areas. So that's what they do. They actually have a pilot program in Haiti where they're experimenting, delivering various types of small goods now. What's exciting and a little bit scary, we now have sort of a meter-sized drone that can carry about a 60-pound payload, about a 10-kilometer distance, which means you can put a lot of drugs and other things, right? You can carry a lot of stuff in 60 pounds. Now, what's super exciting to me is the other applications. Datafly was another company looking at agriculture inspection, and Amazon. Did anybody see the video that Amazon did over the holidays? Everybody thought it was a joke, right? Amazon, oh, they're going to deliver goods and services with drones. Well, it turns out Amazon has more than 40 engineers working on this project, which is not exactly a holiday joke, right? That's a real research investment. This is a fun video. This was actually pretty monumental in that, I'll just show this video. I'll speak over it a little bit. This is a commercial company delivering goods, very high value, very important goods, to very remote areas. All right, so you kind of get the idea, right? He's delivering beer to the ice fishermen out in the middle of the lake because they can't go and back and deliver. Now, what was exciting is the FAA cracked down on this because this is like the first commercial company that was selling its services using drones through an advertisement, right? And we don't really have regulation on drones yet. So the FAA slapped a $10,000 fine on this company, which effectively stopped all drone companies doing anything publicly, right? Still research stuff, but it really put it in the public's eye. In February, the court ruling said, actually, it is not illegal to deliver goods and services using drones. Okay? So it's not illegal to do it. There's no regulation really around it yet. A week after that ruling came out, this company popped up in San Francisco, Quickie. For $1, they'll deliver a pill from the pharmacy to your doorstep in the Mission in San Francisco. Now, I think this is a business model that is absolutely going to fail. I am not going to invest in this because there's a lot of people with guns that like to shoot like flying things in the Mission in San Francisco. And that's a real barrier around everywhere in the world, right? But the fact that these business models are being tried and that there's kind of a Wild West attitude to it is exciting, right? So we're going to see a lot of new applications and a lot of tests being done. Regulation needs to catch up. We got a problem. But Brad talked about robotic cars as one of the primary ways that we're going to be delivering goods and services. Drones are absolutely going to be a part of that. We're going to see a three-way fist fight between Amazon, eBay, and Google to disrupt UPS and FedEx and everyone else if they don't try to keep up, right? Because this is incredibly efficient and startup companies can do it. Now, if you can deliver payloads with drones cheaply, what kind of payloads can you deliver? This is our #1 weapon of choice out in the world. We're killing a lot of people with Predator and now Reaper drones, which are even more autonomous than this. The good news is the DoD has said human interaction has to be in place before we actually kill anyone, right? So that's good news. Of course, all the world subscribes to the DoD's regulation, right? Not really, yeah, of course. What might be really interesting and exciting is that drones can now automatically refuel themselves, which really extends how far they can go, right? And this is sort of the future of the fighter pilot. This is a UAV. There's no pilot on this. And what's really scary and frightening is that human pilots, us mortals, we black out at sort of 5 or 6 Gs. Trained pilots in G suits, they can get to like 9 Gs. This UAV can fly at like 40 Gs. And so if a normal pilot sees one of these things coming, the only thing you do is you eject because you have no chance. Right? So the future of the pilot is gone. Here's how the pilots just got disrupted, right? A lot of jobs being disrupted. Now, if you're afraid of robots killing us, which there's some fear, I think it's a really bad idea to put guns and weapons in robotics' hands. Terminator hopefully would have shown you the future of that path. But I am very optimistic about the future of robotics. Garry Kasparov, the first Grand Chess champion to lose to a computer, he actually, after he lost, he did a lot of research. And he came up with this interesting theory. First of all, humans will never beat computers again in chess. And there's many, many other applications that computers will surpass humans, guaranteed. It's already happening, right? But what's interesting is he found that a human working with a machine can trump the machine, right? Because the two of us work together and something more can happen. There's some optimism around that, right? He took it one step further and he started working with teams, and he actually found himself as an expert in chess, programming machine algorithms, working with an AI. He would lose every time to some amateur chess players who were computer scientists who wrote amazing code with an AI. So the future really is about crafting machine algorithms and being leveraged and empowered by AI systems. And this is relevant for every industry, right? We heard a lot about AI, and the secret is going to be about these machine algorithms. How can you send out an AI system to work for you in a creative new way? And if you're not integrating these, you're going to be left behind, or you already have been left behind. Okay, a couple fun resources that are out there. One, if you're an investor, there's a new ETF called Robo on the NASDAQ. It's tracking pretty well. I'm actually concerned that most of the companies are not going public from the robotics space. There's more of a private market for M&A. There's a few books if you're worried about losing jobs. Probably the best book written currently is Second Machine Age by Andy McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson from MIT. It's really more of an economic perspective. Basically, their premise is there's a huge technological disruption of jobs, and we need to do something about it. They don't quite prescribe what that is. We need to figure it out. If you have kids, anybody have kids? Kids older than 5, are they programming robots? If they're not, get the Legos Mindstorm. It is an amazing platform. I didn't bring it here today. Drag and drop interface. You can have a 5-year-old kid programming a robot to chase the cat, throw a ball at it when you scream a secret word, right? Kids in Uruguay and in Portugal, age 5 and 6, are getting taught robotics in public school. We're not really doing that in the US yet, which is a problem. Here are my quick recommendations. First, if you make products, if you sell products, if you ship products, you need to have a robotic strategy, right? The future of automation is completely going to disrupt those 3 lines. Second, liability insurance for these things. Nobody's even considering who is liable when a robot runs somebody over. Brad talked about it quite a bit yesterday with the cars, drones, everything else. As these are walking around on the streets with us, there's a new type of insurance opportunity here. Tech unemployment, I've hit that one pretty clearly. And remote telepresence devices, which are one of the coolest things out there that you're going to hear a lot about from Scott in a second, allow you to be in more than one place at once. And you've seen them here at the show, Exponential Finance. Highly recommend it. And last, these devices are actually really easy to use, really fun, and if you have kids, it's a great way to spend the weekend. So with that, thank you very much.